Chair now recognizes Mr. Palmer from Alabama for 5 minutes.
Director Cheadle, did local law enforcement ESU teams have compromise authority to engage a perceived threat?
Yes.
Why do you think they didn't use it?
I believe that they follow the same use of force that our
You
agents...
don't, when you have compromise authority, you don't have to get permission if you perceive a threat. And there were not just the ESU units, but there were local law enforcement that had line of sight on the shooter before the shots were taken. So one of my questions is there was supposed to be a briefing with the Secret Service sniper units, your counter assault team members, with the contract team, with the local ESU teams. That didn't take place. Why was that?
So I have been told that there has been a briefing. There was a briefing that took place.
I've been told that there wasn't one.
And again, we are still looking into the facts of the investigation. So
Let me
that we
ask
can-
you this. When were you informed that there was a credible threat against President Trump, former President Trump? When did you learn of that?
Sir, the former president has a number of threats.
I didn't ask you that. There was a credible threat from Iran. When were you informed of that? Answer the question.
We have been monitoring the threats.
You
For the
knew
former
before.
president.
You knew before the rally, okay? All right. The site security plan is generally drafted by the site supervisor and the site agent, probably out of the Pittsburgh district office. Did they take into account the credible threat against President Trump?
Our personnel take into account the threats that are
Then
out
why
there.
would they leave a building? And I will correct the distance that's been quoted. It was about 140 yards with clear line of sight to the president. Why was that building not occupied on the roof? I mean, you could have put Barney Fife on the roof and kept somebody from getting up there. So why wasn't that done?
The plan that was developed that day encompassed a number
ma'am.
of security mitigations.
The issue is the site supervisor, the site agent, and the special agent in charge, who I think signed off on the plan, did not include that in the inner perimeter, and they didn't have a plan to secure the building. As I understand it, the Butler County ESU unit was situated on the second floor of a building next to that, but they didn't have a clear line of sight of the roof. The angle was too severe. The photograph that was taken of the young man, of the shooter, when he had the rangefinder, was taken at 5:15. It wasn't until 5:38 that photograph was transmitted to the Secret Service sniper units. I don't understand the lack of interoperability here in the communication process. I don't understand why people didn't perceive that as a credible threat. The video that Mr. Christopher Morphy had shown there was clearly a credible threat. So how is it that all of these mistakes could be made? How many explosive devices were found on or near the site?
Again, I would have to defer you to the FBI.
Madam, I believe
Details
they
of
were
that.
in his car, and there, I think there might have been one near a main gas line. It wasn't just the fact that he had a rifle. It was the fact that he had the ability to inflict enormous harm, enormous numbers of casualties had those devices exploded. I want to know also, when your agents conduct a site review, are they fully informed of all of the threats that are being made against the principle that they're protecting?
What I can tell you is that when our agents go out to conduct an advance, their whole goal is to ensure
I
the safety and
understand what their
security.
goal is. The failure to secure that building not only put the former president's life in danger, it put the lives of individuals in the crowd in danger as well. I mean, the Reagan shooting, there were other people shot at that time as well. And the Secret Service members' lives were in danger. So I don't understand how you can continue to stay in the position you're in when this was a a failure of historic magnitude. 43 years without anything like this happening. And you failed, in this case, in a spectacular way. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Mfume from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to commend you and the ranking member on your joint statement and for holding this hearing that we might all at least attempt to try to get some answers. Some of us, Ms. Cheadle, grew up in an era not too unlike what we see today in terms of political violence. And some of us remember the November 22nd, 1963 assassination of President Kennedy. Some of us, like myself, remember 2 days later when Jack Ruby on live TV shot and killed Lee Harvey Oswald. We've seen over and over and over since that time these kind of attempts, whether it was the assassination of Martin Luther King or Bobby Kennedy, or the attempted attack on George Wallace in Laurel, Maryland, the shooting in 1981 of Ronald Reagan, our friend and colleague Steve Scalise shooting here in D.C., and the unfortunate attack on Paul Pelosi, and now this matter regarding former President Trump. Let me try, if I might, to take another walk at this. People just assume that whoever is in charge takes full responsibility when there's never been, at least on this magnitude and scale, this sort of failure. So when members ask you, are you going to resign, and you say you have no intention to, they are perplexed, like many people who watch what's going on. And there's some things I just don't understand. Why was the building, the ARG building, placed outside of the perimeter when clearly it was close enough for someone to launch an attack?
So again, sir, we are looking into all of the details of how the advanced was comprised, but I can tell you that there was overwatch on that building provided that day.
By a drone?
I'm not going to get into the specifics of technology or assets that were used in this forum.
I think it's fair to say the overwatch failed because the shooter got up on the roof and stayed there for a while, and people had pointed him out. So do you think that your overwatch was a failure in that case?
I think that we need to know the full details to understand how this occurred.
And why was the rooftop left naked to begin with? Can you tell us that, considering it was within the line of sight and so very close?
Again, I can't speak to the specifics of this particular event site, but what I can tell you is that when the Secret Service develops an advanced plan, they take into account a number of factors when they're building their advance. If there are buildings or areas of concern, and overwatch is one of those mitigations that they want to put in place, then they will cover off areas of responsibility.
I understand that, but the shooter came to the attention of your agency 52 minutes before the former president got to the stage. Did anybody get assigned to watch or cover that individual who had already been seen with a advanced finder on him and other suspicious matters? Was anybody assigned to track him?
So what I'd like to clarify is that a suspicious individual
I got that part.
was
It's
brought
not a threat.
to the attention
I know.
of our personnel. And again, having a rangefinder at an outdoor event.
Well, let me ask you this. When the suspicious person was brought to the attention of the Secret Service, was anybody in the detail ordered to follow and stay with that suspicious person just because they might become a threat?
So we have a number of teams that are on the ground. And again, we are trying to verify the timelines of when those notifications were made to our personnel so that they could assume the responsibility of trying to track that individual.
Ms. Cheadle, there has been a lot of discussion, some of which raised itself earlier in this hearing, about poor staff morale within your agency. And I have the July 17th report of Government Executive, which is a credible reporting service for the federal government, for employees. And the 2023 ranking of places to work within the federal government showed, and this is through the Office of Personnel Management, that the Secret Service came in 413th out of 459 sub-agencies. and agencies. Can you explain that?
Certainly. What I can tell you is the Secret Service is a difficult job. It challenges our employees daily. It's holidays, it's weekends, it's no leave periods.
But, Madam, people come to work knowing that. You do explain that when you hire somebody. They know that. It's the same with other agencies. They miss holidays, they come to work at odd hours. But to be worked, one of the worst places to work within the federal government, 413 out of 459? I just need an explanation. What do you think as the director there?
I think that this
And that's the last question, but please answer Mr. Mfube's question.
I think that this is a challenging job. I think that it's a challenging environment to be in law enforcement, and we do have a no-fail mission. And our folks are tasked with that every day, 365 days of the year. But I can tell you I've also taken a number of measures since I've been the director to recruit and retain and stem the tide of attrition in our agency, which will hopefully alleviate some of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.